Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Healthy Innovators Live TV. My name is Barry Shrier and I'm your host. These episodes are sponsored by GIANT Health. The website for GIANT is www.giant.health. And GIANT is a global community of nearly 200,000 people around the world, everybody whose business is healthcare, technology, and innovation. Every week we bring to you incredibly interesting people who are at the forefront of innovation, successful entrepreneurs and innovators that are looking at some of society's greatest problems and challenges in healthcare and tackling those challenges head on with new healthcare innovations and new entrepreneurial spirit and technology innovation. So I'm very, very happy to introduce you to two of my very good friends who I've known for about 100 years, Eugene and Avi. Great to see you guys, and thank you very much for joining us. Every week, what we want to do is we want to talk about some of the biggest challenges in healthcare, some of the biggest problems in society that healthcare is dealing with, and what are the opportunities with technology and innovation and the entrepreneurial spirit to address these challenges. Our vision is to improve the health and the well-being of people around the world by supporting and enabling innovation and supporting health tech entrepreneurs. So that's what this is about. We have tens of thousands of viewers from around the world, and we invite all of you to join us on our entrepreneurial journey of innovation and improving healthcare outcomes. So thank you to all of our listeners. Thank you to our sponsor, GIANT Health. And today we're going to be talking to Avi and to Eugene about entrepreneurialism, the entrepreneurial journey, and about big issues in healthcare and in innovation. So Eugene, hello, great to see you. How are you today?
Doing good, and I just wanted to quickly thank you for getting us on this and actually reconnecting myself and Avi as we were I just happened to mention Avi in the clubhouse room out of old places. Yes. But one of the key things to health and improving healthcare is actually connectivity, right? And access to individuals that are driving this. And so here we are. After 4 or 5 years since last time we've seen each other, Avi.
Yes. Yeah, no, very good point. And thanks, Eugene. And Avi, it's great to see you. And likewise, haven't had a chance to see you as much as I'd like to have recently. So good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks so much, Barry. And thank you for having me. And to echo Eugene's point, it's really great to be connected again after so many years. So looking forward to this discussion today.
Yes, likewise. And I'm so glad we have the chance to be together. So Eugene, we're talking about the entrepreneurial journey and what some of the big challenges are in healthcare. And so what are some of your experiences as an entrepreneur? And if you want to just share with us an example of a big challenge in healthcare that we're trying to tackle together.
First, it's right before this, I was actually in a call with an entrepreneur. So I do a lot of these serendipity calls as the LinkedIn connections come in. I sort of respond generally, and there's a difference between a wannapreneur, so somebody working for a big company, right, and saying, well, it would be so cool to start a startup or join a startup, and an entrepreneur that is literally taken a leap of faith because of their belief system, because of the belief in their idea. And so before I go into tackling the big challenges, because I think there's just way too many, I wanted to make a cognitive statement between a wannapreneur and an entrepreneur. Right. So I don't know, and by the way, I've been on, I'll say, big companies and my own ventures. Now I'm back in my own venture with my amazing wife. So
yes, well, that's a very interesting point. And to be honest, I've had a little bit of experience in the big global business environment when I was recruited by Deutsche Bank to launch the world's first mobile payment platform. But that was many, 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 many years ago in the dawn of the GSM mobile phone era and push button phones. And since then, I've been much more on the entrepreneurial side. So I always wonder about that. In a big business, can you go up to your boss and say, look, I'd like 2 million euros and I'm going to do this new innovation, and the odds are 95% it's going to fail, but we're going to learn an enormous amount of stuff. Can that happen in the world of big business? What's your experience, Avi?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point Eugene makes. And I guess from a personal perspective, to add another term to the mix, the concept of the intrapreneur, right? So in my last sort of role as a doctor in the NHS, I guess I took more of the role as an intrapreneur, both within the NHS, working as a doctor, trying to drive change through launch initiatives, but also My career personally in large healthcare and technology organizations, trying to drive that agenda that you just spoke to, Barry, trying to think of innovative ways to do things differently, but within the realms of a large company. And I think to your question, can it be done? Absolutely. And there are many successful innovators and entrepreneurs inside large technology companies. And sometimes that is the better way to go. If the problem you're solving, the environment, the resources and the scale at which you're working is going to be better within a large company. But to Eugene's point, it is very different to launching your own business and, having bootstrapping it yourself and having to raise funding yourself. And I think the challenge is that there will be some that are similar, but obviously many that are different too. And I guess from myself, from my career, I've had a bit of more of my time as sort of the entrepreneur within the large systems and large, and obviously through Drpreneurs, trying to explore my own entrepreneurial ambitions through my nonprofit as well.
Yes.
I just want to tack on because I don't know, Barry, if you know this, but I actually writing a book very slowly, and it takes dedication as well, called Hard Pill to Swallow, right? And it's a little bit of the journey through the pharmaceutical industry and sort of big corporate. And, to Avi's point, I actually kind of self-describe myself as a serial intra and entrepreneur, and in both sides, I like to push things. And, on the entrepreneurship side, it's absolutely challenging to go against the grain, for lack of a better term, driving something completely new.
Right.
And to a certain extent, it's on one side, it's no different than actually pitching to a bunch of VCs. The difference is you're not pitching to a committee that or set of individuals that a lot of times it's very politically charged versus you're in the open market, and if 57 VCs say no, you only need one, right? Where I would also say, and Avi, I'm curious on your thoughts, you always still need to find a champion inside the organization, and that champion and godfather, godmother that can cover your ass a bit and, and help you grow and spread.
Absolutely. I think that concept of a champion is absolutely right. And whether that's in a large system like the NHS, you need your champions there to help drive that, or within a large technology organization. And I think beyond that as well, I think one of the other constraints you have within a large organization compared to being an entrepreneur in the free market is you have to align to the organization's overall business strategy, which in the free with the whole market at your exposure, you wouldn't have to do that as an entrepreneur. You could pitch to the right VCs or the right investors depending on your problem, which you may not get the chance to do so in a large company setting.
That's very interesting. This phrase going against the grain, Eugene, doesn't come up that much in conversations we have with entrepreneurs, and yet they are doing that regarding the status quo with their business and their MVPs and their pilots and their trials and so forth. But very interesting. It doesn't really come up quite so much. I wonder if that's something that exists, but it's just more external with the entrepreneur and more directly in your day job, sitting at your desk for the entrepreneur. Very interesting.
I mean, it is an interesting point. Actually, now that you say it, I don't hear of it in the more of the entrepreneurial. And I guess part of that is, again, you're in a very open marketplace, and when you're in a big corporation, you could argue that a large corporation globally is a country of its own, with its own borders, right? And a limited, and even though those borders span geographic locations, there's still processes, procedures, and things that it does feel like there's a grain, and you gotta, as an entrepreneur, if you hit a wall here, you just take a slight left, right? Or slight right.
Yes. No, that's extremely interesting. And Avi, I suppose if you're an entrepreneur coming into, for example, a national healthcare system, for example, a state-run system that you find typically in Europe, maybe you are going against the grain, even though you're not the insider, but you're going against the grain in terms of the status quo in a very large, perhaps fairly conservative, fairly bureaucratic organization. Does that sort of resonate from your experiences?
Yeah, absolutely. And the NHS something like the NHS is really a collection of many different organizations, right? And depending on which organization you are within that setting, you'll have a different myriad of challenges. I think one of the things to mention, though, is, you know, the healthcare space right now, it's a very interesting and exciting time to be an innovator in the healthcare space and within the NHS, given the wealth of problems there are to solve. And I think the culture is changing, albeit slowly. So or, you know, intrapreneurs, innovators, and entrepreneurs within the NHS as well, who are getting the support, getting the champions to help them take their ideas forward, and to really try and impact patient care on the ground. And so that's promising, very positive, and you know, it's great to be part of.
Yes, yeah, that cultural change is, I mean, that's music to my ears. And if you didn't say that already, I would have paid you to say it. It's just absolutely magnificent. I've been reading recently about innovation in very large organizations, and you have some famous case studies of successes and failures. The famous Park Palo Alto Research Center in Silicon Valley, which invented enormous technologies but didn't successfully commercialize them. And Steve Jobs, of course, knocking on the door there and pinching an awful lot of amazing innovations and then successfully commercializing them. The vibe I get is that maybe 20 or 30 or 40 years ago, there wasn't such a cultural recognition of the value of innovation within very large businesses. But it appears that that's changing over the decades. And Eugene, do you have any experience about an evolution within very large global organizations? Or do we really not have enough evidence? And of course, in fact, none of us were working back there 50 years ago.
So I was going to say, maybe I don't have enough evidence, but
I dyed my hair gray just for the show today.
And I shaved mine just for the show today. So but again, just observational. I mean, I think there's a level of, and we chatted before we started recording, a level of FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. And there's enough of cases, you know, whether, and the familiar ones that everybody uses, right? The Kodaks, you don't want to be Kodak, you don't want to be Blockbuster or whatever. And, you know, as there are global pressures on large organizations, I think most leaders are realizing, yes, you can do, you know, cost cutting, but you got to continue innovating, right? And I think, I mean, I would say it's been there, right? I mean, if you think about Michael Porter's books, right, they also go decades back. So I think it's been there, but I think the escalated pressures on these business, I think brought it more into the forefront. But then, you know, and I'll pause after that. Obviously, there's many ways to get into this. And when we talk about healthcare, and we talk about, again, I'll use pharmaceutical as an example. When you're running, picking a random like 30 billion P&L, right, globally, so what if you can launch a digital therapeutic that you can charge $10 a month for? So what? How does that make a dent into your P&L in the short term?
That's very interesting. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Eugene, thank you. Just for the sake of our listeners, in case we don't have people who have the long-term career backgrounds in innovation and entrepreneurialism, Eugene, the Kodak moment, if you can just define what that is.
So things happen slowly and then suddenly, right? I mean, if we think about, you know, the digital cameras, right, that Kodak actually, and you probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think invented them, if I'm not mistaken. Yep. But they never took advantage of it until somebody else did, right? So it's a little bit, you can apply this across multitude of verticals in healthcare, right? If you think, let's just use the example in US, Livongo, right? There's been a lot of disease management companies for many years. Livongo is a novel disease management company that just sold to Teladoc for 18 billion. Now, you can measure outcomes versus the shareholder outcomes, but that's a whole different discussion, right?
Sure. Yeah. No, that's helpful though.
Just to add to this discussion, I guess as the competitive landscape has been changing in recent years, and the competition really has been heightening in all sectors, and including healthcare, you see a lot of large organizations, large corporates now looking to smaller companies and startups to partner with them, to acquire them as a way of driving innovation within their own organization as well. And as we know, the barriers to entry of a startup developing a new product in a space are much lower than they were maybe 30, 40 years ago.
Absolutely.
The competitive landscape market is changing, which is why you're seeing these new dynamics.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. Yeah, thank you, Avi. And Avi, I'm just wondering about any particular characteristics in the healthcare sector that relate to or have to be acknowledged in terms of innovation and the entrepreneur's journey. And so, Avi, I'm just wondering, for example, what is your experience with medical students, with clinicians, with the interface between those professionals whose job is to deliver healthcare and innovation? We'd love to hear more about your experiences there.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So I guess my background, just for those who don't know, I'm a medical doctor by background, practiced in the NHS for about 4 years. And so I'm also the co-founder of a nonprofit organization called Drpreneurs, which is really a community for doctors, medical students, and other healthcare professionals and students who really in this space of technology, innovation, entrepreneurship. I think, in recent years now, the appetite is certainly increasing for doctors, medical students to get more involved forward, more support in terms of fellowships and different programs and accelerator programs, like things like the NHS Clinical Entrepreneur Program that are allowing doctors and clinicians to do it in combination with clinical practice. Got a bit of a combination of push and pull factors, which are leading to sort of more and more clinicians getting involved in the space.
Nice. And so do you see that as a growing trend going forward, or is there going to be a rebound where people say, look, doctors should just practice medicine, stick to your knitting, and let's have other people do tech innovation as a separate specialism?
Yeah, I personally see it's going to be a growing trend. I think it's absolutely essential. I think clinicians have a key and pivotal role to play in digital health. Now, does every clinician want to or need to go and launch their own startup? Absolutely not, right?
Yes.
And that needs to be a very considered decision, weighing up the risks, the pros and cons. But can clinicians be involved, whether in a advisory role, chief medical officer role, or being just part of a multidisciplinary team that is driving forward change? Absolutely. And that trend should only increase, especially in healthcare, because you absolutely need clinicians involved to ensure that solutions are built, designed in the right way, and also to support with the whole change management and adoption effort of getting digital solutions adopted into healthcare.
Just to add to this, I just saw a tweet. I don't remember by who. So whoever is listening or seeing this, credit to you. Customer service is not a department, right? It's the way of life of a company. And I would almost say, like, let's pick metabolic health or diabetes, right? That's not, yes, there are specialists, but human beings' health is not a department, right? You're, as a human, responsible for your health. That's my ultimate thought process on it. And then it's a cooperative team, right? And sort of the accountable team of specialists. And, also for the way of background, as I mentioned earlier, kind of entrepreneur, been through PBM and pharma and my own startups, now building a company with my amazing wife, YourCoach.health, which is a health coaching platform, and we're experimenting. But some of the things that we're seeing and hearing, actually, lots of nurses are actually leaving the practice of nursing, getting their health coaching degrees, because they're saying, well, we can no longer help patients inside the healthcare system. Lots of doctors are going to get their health and wellness coaching degrees, more so because there's I call it a non-clinical psychotherapist. So actually adding on to their clinical knowledge. So I think a lot of this is evolving. And I think at the end of the day, we are managing our own health with the support of many specialists. And just because you are or not an entrepreneur, it just depends on your journey, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Eugene, that's very interesting what you're saying, because there is this necessary requirement, if I understand correctly. Healthcare, of course, historically has been sick care. You don't contact the doctor until you're unwell. You don't phone 999 or 911 until you're unwell. Then the ambulance comes, then you go to hospital. But that's financially unsustainable for any society, isn't it? Endless growth in the provision of sick care and the challenges we have with the aging population and big new disease states, diabetes and so forth. But how does that relate to a necessary transition in society to what you just mentioned, which is us realizing we're in charge of our health rather than my doctor being in charge of my health? And so, where does wellness come into that? And what are you guys doing with your coach?
Yeah, it's probably more of on one side, it's a philosophical discussion. And you mentioned culture earlier on, right? We talked about, and I think it is generational. Like if I look at my girls, their whole thing is we're responsible for health.
Oh,
I mean, there's no, again, I think as a little bit of a trailblazer with all kinds of devices, self-help, you got to put on that mask for yourself so you can help others.
Yeah.
So I think there's an educational component to it. So that I just want to put that to the side because I think it will take time. The second piece, and specifically just to give you a little bit, and the listeners, so Your Coach Health at a core of it, and we are focused in the U.S. market, but we're starting to work with like UK Health Coaches Association, for example.
Nice.
Isabella and Huti in the UK. While it's not a new profession, it's been around for, let's say, 20 years. It's only now starting to be looked at as of recent as a profession that has also science behind it. This is not, as I joke around, cuckoo voodoo science that you put on a cream. There's a process, there's motivational interviewing techniques, there's reflection techniques, and how you tease out the goals of your client and help them achieve the goals, right? And so what Your Coach does, we provide a platform, a full practice management solution for, I'll call it the gig economy of health and wellness coaching, where they can manage their own clients. And we, as a young company startup, we're experimenting with different models and the revenue stream models in the front end. But our ultimate goal is we want to power up this earth with squads of health coaches that are individual, because I think we all talk about personalized medicine. We're talking about personalized health, right? We're all ebb and flow. So I'll pause here.
Yeah. This idea of personalized medicine, I guess, is also, taking off, but there's a bigger, broader issue in terms of understanding public health and cultural transitions and that type of thing. Does that overlap with your world, Avi? What are you doing these days, in terms of your own actual activities in health and tech and innovation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm currently with IBM, where I'm an associate partner, where I've been for the 4.5 years, working across their sort of healthcare technology business unit, across a range of activities. As I mentioned, I'm also the co-founder of Drpreneurs, a nonprofit. So I guess my remit right now is pretty broad in terms of, we're really working with healthcare organizations, both life sciences and other organizations like payers, to really help them think about how they can solve some of these complex healthcare challenges, leveraging technologies like artificial intelligence, machine learning, analytics, and so forth. Definitely, during my time, I've spent some time in the personalized medicine space as well, in the oncology and genomics space, which is a really fast-growing and evolving space. And there you can see really one of the examples where you can really see the effect of innovation impacting on patient care, right? When a new therapy, a new targeted treatment is released, and you're able to see that drive meaningful outcomes on patient care is really rewarding. And
absolutely.
So yeah, my remit's fairly broad at the moment. I would say a lot of focus, obviously, in some of the pandemic response work, trying to think about how we can best continue to manage the response, whether it be through vaccine distribution systems and using technology from that perspective, but also starting to think about, post-pandemic, as we start to come out and we start to open up back into society again.
Yes.
How are we going to deal, and how the NHS is going to deal with the huge backlog and the myriad of issues that have built up over the past year, and how we technology and innovation to address some of those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge challenges, but I'm glad there's so many bright, motivated people like you involved in looking at this. This interface between the entrepreneur, the intrapreneur, the people with innovation in their job title in huge companies, the people doing it themselves. How do you navigate that? Eugene, how do you bounce back and forth? I didn't fit. I was never a good fit in the big global company experience that I had. All I remember is arguing with everybody at the main board level with regard to what we should do and why can't we do everything faster. But you've had a lot of good, successful experiences in big businesses, as well as your personal entrepreneurial successes and experiences. How do you navigate that back and forth so well?
I mean, the jury is still out if it's navigating well or not, but but I think I would say, and I'll flip to the corporate side, lots of deep breaths, right? Because I think realizing that while there might be something in my head and, I got sort of the team on board, right? And some individuals, somebody said it once to me that you got to pick up where people are at today. And the other aspect of it is by the time you personally are bored of saying something, that just means that I'll say the rest of the world is starting to hear you. So you got to keep going and moving and keep repeating that message, right? Yes. So that's, I'll say, on the corporate journey side, yes. It's a lot of patience. It's a lot of deep breaths, to a point where I was talking to somebody in a meditation company and said, well, so what's your use case, right? And I won't mention names, but I would say I would just go in the meeting like this. Instead of I don't have to yell, I don't have to say anything, but people actually realize when I take that deep breath, that means I'm frustrated as hell and I'm really trying to take a deep breath. And so it's sending a message in a way. So that's on one side. I think, hop in between. I'm also, I think most people that do know me, I have something in my head and I'll drive it and I'll be full force ahead. And to me, get the right people, with me on the journey, whatever that journey may be. Yeah. But I'm also not an operator. And any recruiters that come in my way, my first statement is I'm not an operator. I like taking things from 1 to 10, 10 to 100. Maybe 100 to 1,000, but that's a limited scope, but I'm not an operator. And so I think as soon as you realize what your strengths are and where your gaps are, this is how you navigate, right?
Yeah, no, that's very interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. What's your experience, for example, Avi, within IBM, and how does IBM attempt to interface with entrepreneurs? How does IBM cross the chasm, so to speak, between innovation that's happening outside and an obligation, I assume, to try and drive innovation internally as well?
Yeah, so I guess I'll take a broader perspective. I'll sort of take my IBM hat off to answer that question, because I have worked in other large companies as well. I guess from my perspective, being a clinician by background, having to, and to echo some of Eugene's points, having to transition into sort of different roles, right? Whether it be in entrepreneurial roles or managerial roles within large organizations. Eugene mentioned you have to really try to understand your own personal skill sets, understand your strengths and weaknesses, and try and play to that a little bit whilst you build the time. You get the time to develop new skills, whether it be on the intellectual footing or on the technological footing. And I think within large organizations like IBM and others, what's great is they do allow that opportunity to build new skills, right? Within a controlled environment where you can learn, you can be mentored, you can work both on internal projects, but also working on other new projects with external market as well, and work internationally. And I think IBM, to take that example, is a massive company with global footprint, and they work with many different organizations in and outside of the healthcare space globally. But I think from my perspective, it's been interesting to have the different perspectives of both working for a national health service, building skills as a doctor, working within large corporates like Bupa and IBM, but then also working within the entrepreneurship ecosystem through Drpreneurs.
Exactly.
Bring that all together and make sense of it.
Yeah, absolutely invaluable.
I just want to tack on. I mean, it's interesting because, even from the previous large companies that I've left, I still have people reaching out and saying, hey, how would you do this, over there or over there, or whatever, substitute the logo. And my comment is, the moment you leave, the company has a DNA, and that DNA does evolve over time. And sometimes, those, maybe not to get too geeky, but those snips are on and off, right? And so the moment you leave a company, that DNA, the politics, a lot of that changes and evolves, right? And so I just wanted to tack on that I think companies do evolve. And I think once you're out of a particular organization, it's almost like you need to relearn things, right? Being as an outsider in.
Yes, yeah. I can imagine that is the case. And I hadn't thought so much, Eugene, about the theme of the company's DNA evolving. So perhaps there's a little bit of epigenetics happening. And at one stage, you are creating some impact on the DNA while you're there, which I think would be quite cool. Hey, well, look, you guys, we don't have too much time. We're going to have to wrap up in about 5 minutes. I'm sorry to say. We're together in the pub right now, and I could buy the next round and we could continue this extremely interesting and informative and worthwhile conversation. But in terms of wrapping up, we've been talking about the entrepreneurial themes and the challenges between being an entrepreneur on the outside, doing it yourself, and being an entrepreneur on the inside. And the subject came up of finding a champion, which I think is extremely interesting. And in fact, I think that's exceedingly applicable, whether you are doing it yourself and launching your own business out there in the outer world, or whether you're doing this with some innovation role within a large global enterprise. In terms of summarizing, Avi, do you want to just comment a little bit about the entrepreneurial journey and any advice or experience that you have had that you'd like to share with our listeners, in particular young people who maybe are med students or young people in business that are considering entrepreneurial pursuits?
Sure. I think the first point to mention, I guess, on reflection is, first start and ask yourself, why if it is something you want to do, to be an entrepreneur, why? Is there a problem you're looking to solve and you're so passionate about that you absolutely have to do it? And then also think, why now as well? Because timing is often everything with things like this. But then whether to do it as your own venture or through another organization, I think that's an important point as well, because you don't have to necessarily build your own company. You could join another company that is doing something similar and be that sort of entrepreneur, innovator, and allow yourself to learn through it. But also, if you do have a learning desire to build it yourself, and you've identified a gap in the market and believe truly passionately that you can do it differently, then absolutely go for it. But make sure it's a considered decision. And decisions out there, I think it's trying to do it alongside clinical practice and maintain too is tough, and some can do it. And obviously, giving up clinical practice to go and pursue a commercial venture is a massive, massive decision. So absolutely do not take it lightly if that's what you're looking to do. But I think above all, do not go it alone. The point around champion, we can extend that to mentors and coaches, is really important. I have mentors, I have sort of coaches myself who have helped me navigate my career, both, the good parts and the bad. And that is absolutely essential. So within a company, or whether you're spinning out or building your own company, find a champion, find a mentor, find a coach, build a relationship with them, and don't do it alone. Partner up with people, because it is a tough journey out there. And, doing it alone is very tough.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I certainly agree with you, and very, very good points. If we can just have your phone number so all the people who need coaching can phone you after this show, then
always have contact.
Pardon me for being cheeky. How about you, Eugene?
So this is amazing. The one that you finished off with, Avi, I was going to say every mentor needs a mentor. Every coach needs a coach. Every psychiatrist needs a psychiatrist, right? None of us, we're all discovering. And again, the world is continuously changing. This is why we have innovators driving things. So that's, I think, I was going to kind of pick, I think you, Avi, took it from, do you want to become one, right? And I was going to say, once you do, right, don't forget about a coach, don't forget about a mentor, and to a certain extent, you have to have your own personal board of directors, right? Somebody who can help you and guide you. That's one. Secondly, in that same respect, don't be afraid to ask for help, right? I think, all human beings actually do like to help others. There's very few that don't. And so that's the second piece. And then the third one, I think there's this, I don't know, or about the entrepreneurs work 24 hours a day and, nonstop and et cetera. Mental health is actually something we all individuals and entrepreneurs need to worry about. And to give like a very concrete example, and I know it's tough, and you know what, if our investors are watching, that's cool. Marina and I, we shut off on a Friday afternoon because you know what, there's always stuff. And I actually taken that step back to the balcony, for lack of a better term, lets you become that much stronger, when you do need to come right back into it. So those are my three.
No, very, very good points, Eugene. Absolutely valuable. And Eugene, I'm just making a little mental note here that you work part-time and that you have an attitude problem. But
yeah, pretty much.
No, I'm joking. I think, in fact, what you've said is invaluable. And you do hear about career burnout within the healthcare system. You hear about these things a little bit less in the entrepreneurial ecosystem because there isn't so much open conversation and discussion about these subjects. But they're absolutely crucial, and really glad to hear you guys vocalizing those. Like I said, we're going to have to wrap up in a few minutes. And so just in closing, Avi, tell us a little bit more about Drpreneurs in terms of what's the website and what are some of the goals of Drpreneurs over the next year or so? And do you have any requests or invitations to our listeners?
Yeah, thanks, Barry. So Drpreneurs, we're a nonprofit organization, community for healthcare professionals and students interested in technology, innovation, entrepreneurship. We've done a lot of things over the years, been around for over 8-9 years now, but at its core, I think focused on three main areas. So interviews on our website, drpreneurs.com. We feature a lot of interviews with doctors turned entrepreneurs or other clinical entrepreneurs to sort of share their story and be a source of inspiration, information. Events, and we also partner with events like the fantastic GIANT Health event that we've been partnering with for many years now, to build that sense of community and get doctors, software developers, engineers, other people all down together so we can share ideas together. And then we have a jobs listing platform where we help healthcare startups and healthcare organizations to recruit clinical professionals, sort of clinical talent. So those are the three main things we're focused on. We do it as a passion project. It's always been a passion project for me. So from my perspective going forward, it's just about keeping the community spirit there, partnering more with other organizations, and just continuing to keep the conversation going and helping each other out. Excellent.
No, very, very good. Thank you for the summary. And what's the website address?
It's www.drpreneurs.com.
Drpreneurs.com. Yeah. Brilliant. And likewise, Eugene, love to hear just a little bit more in summary about your current exciting initiative and what are some of your asks to our community.
Yeah, no, we're working with hundreds and hundreds of coaches on the platform, improving their experience and their clients' experience. So today it's a platform, and that's sort of an iterative process constantly, and we're growing pretty amazingly quickly to a point where trying to keep up with that side of the demand. But the ask to the community, if people are listening from, we're looking to test some waters with progressive employers to sort of help their employees navigate some of these challenging times and discover and reach the human being's individual goals, and equals one.
Nice. Oh, that's
yourcoach.health is the website.
Say the website again, please.
Yourcoach.health.
Perfect. Look, you guys, I've loved speaking with you. And like I said, I'm so sorry I can't buy you another round and we can continue this discussion for another hour or two. But I'm certainly looking forward to seeing you in person sometime soon. So Eugene, great to see you. Thank you for your time. Likewise, Avi, great to see you. And we really appreciate you committing the time to this episode. So thank you for all the interesting insights, the intelligence, the experience that you're sharing with our community. I'm sure I can speak on behalf of everybody to say that we're very grateful. So I'm certainly keen to keep in touch with you. And one day I'm going to get my vaccine. I'm not sure when they give it to people under 30 years old, but I'm looking to getting that sometime soon. And hoping to see you both in person within this year at the very, very latest. So thanks once again. And of course, to all of our listeners from around the world, this has been this week's episode of Healthy Innovators Live TV. These weekly shows bring to you incredibly interesting and successful and dynamic and ambitious people from around the world, like Eugene, like Avi, who are doing great stuff in the world of wellness and healthcare and innovation. And I'm really proud to have them participating and sharing all of their expertise with us. I'd also like to thank our sponsors. These shows every week are brought to you by GIANT Health. Please go to our website, www.giant.health, and check out the latest innovation from GIANT Health, which is European Health Tech Innovation Week. This is 5 events coming up from the 17th to the 21st of May in Berlin, Barcelona, Paris, Stockholm, and Liverpool in England. 5 one-day conferences and trade shows championing the best innovation from leading hospitals and healthcare providers all across Europe, and bringing together entrepreneurs, global corporates, investors, and the direct providers of healthcare in Europe. So do please check out the website, www.giant.health. And I'd also like to thank our other sponsors, Vodafone Business and Barclays Bank, and their Eagle Labs Innovation Program. So thank you to all of our sponsors. Once again, my name is Barry Shrier, and I'm grateful for all of you listening to this episode, and we hope to hear from you sometime soon. Thank you very much.